Guess what? Felt play food is so fun to make. It's fairly inexpensive, and if you've never made it before, this lemon slice tutorial is a perfect place to start. They're really fun to make for your kids, and the best part is that if you mess up, they're probably not gonna notice. So let's go ahead and get started. Before we begin, you'll need to download the pattern for this tutorial, which is available on my Etsy shop. Since this is my beginner tutorial, you can download this pattern for free. Just be sure to use the promo code that's listed with the link in the description. Now let's talk about materials. You're gonna need yellow and white felt. Any felt you find at the craft store is great for this project. I'm using Threadart because I like a little bit more of a premium felt. This is HTV, which is heat transfer vinyl. And again, really any brand should work with this project. This one I found on Amazon, it's by HTV Rond. You'll need a pair of sharp scissors, a weeding tool, some light tan colored thread with a needle of course, a few sewing pins, not a whole box like this, just a few, bright yellow thread, and some polyfill to stuff these lemons. For your Cricut, you're going to need a fine point blade and a rotary blade. You'll need a heat press or an iron for the HTV, and I'm going to use my brother's sewing machine to put this project together, but if you'd like, you can even sew it by hand. All of these materials are listed in the description, and we're ready to get started. Once you have the pattern downloaded, we are going to upload the project. I have mine saved on my iPad here, so I just selected it. I'm gonna title it Lemon, because it's lemon, haha. And once it's on there, it should look like this. Feel free to resize this pattern to whatever size lemon you would like. Just make sure not to resize them individually because that will throw off the proportions for this pattern. I'm gonna do 3.5 inches because I've made quite a few lemons and I feel like that's about the right size that I think a lemon slice should be. You'll also notice that the center and the peel are two different shades of yellow. That's because we want to use two different mats. We want to tell the Cricut that there are two materials we are using for this project. Also, one more thing, you'll notice if you just dive right in to make it, you're gonna find that the center of the lemon is all over the place like this, and that is really gonna suck to have to put all those little pieces together, so I'll show you how to fix that. Go ahead to Layers, and then you want to deselect, then click on every single piece that you want to be one giant piece. And then once you have them selected, you'll click the little paper clip, which is the attach function. And now go ahead, click make it just to check. And there it is. So now you can see they're all together tightly and neatly, and it'll all come out as one piece. Next, we will duplicate our project. I'm gonna make 4 lemons, so I'll just duplicate this 3 times. And it doesn't matter what they look like here because we are going to just rearrange our materials on the mat. So let's go ahead and make it. Click on mat, 12 by 12. And this part will really depend on what size materials that you're making. Most felt you buy at the craft store will come in a 9 by 13, so just kind of be aware of what it's going to look like on your mat and how it will fit. I use 12 by 12 sizes of felt, so I'm just going to try to fit this in the best way possible where I'm not really wasting any material. And that looks probably about as close as I'm going to get that. So I'm going to swap these 2 mats right here. I'm going to rearrange them because we're going to use 2 different tools and I don't want to have to swap out the blade more than once. Okay, for mat number 1, we're going to use felt. I have mine bookmarked, but if you search all materials, you should be able to find it. Then click Edit Tools, and we're going to select the rotary blade. Anytime you cut fabric on a Cricut, you have to use the rotary blade. The fine point blade will not cut fabric. Default pressure is fine for this project. Now we're gonna load our rotary blade into the Cricut. It's like a little pizza cutter. Just gonna clip it on in, just like that. I'm using a fabric grip for the felt. Go ahead and position it on according to how it looks on your screen. Hit it with a brayer tool and go ahead and follow the rest of the directions and load it in. You are then going to repeat this process with mat 2, which is gonna be the peels on the yellow felt. For mat number 3, we're going to use heat transfer. Mine's the non-Cricut brand, so I'm going to select that. Normally you would mirror heat transfer vinyl, but this is a symmetrical pattern, so it's not necessary. We're going to put in the fine point blade, so make sure you swap that back out. Use a standard grip mat for your HTV. Make sure to do shiny side down so it cuts on the back. Hit it with the brayer tool and send it through the Cricut. Now that we have our cut pieces, we're going to take some embroidery scissors and we're just gently going to free the pieces from the rest of the felt. I passionately hate cutting things out by hand. That's why I like to do this on the Cricut. They just come out nice and sharp and crisp, and I don't have to cut them out. And then we're going to weed from the back on the HTV. It should just pull off very nicely like this. I love weeding. It's very therapeutic. We're going to put the HTV on the white lemon circle. I'm going to show you how to get a nice crisp center line right here. We're just going to fold them in half. Make sure that the edges line up perfectly and secure it with a pin. And then just lay them down. This isn't any crazy expensive heat mat. This is just a dish mat from Target, I think. We're gonna take the heat press and I'm just gonna use it to kind of iron in the creases. Once I have those nice and hot, they should just kind of leave a nice little line down the middle so that we know where the center line is now. Place your HTV layers on top of the white parts. This part does need to be very precise, so take your time. With my heat press, I have it set to the directions on the package that came with my HTV, so whatever settings you need to use, just go ahead and follow those directions. Mine calls for 15 seconds, so we're just gonna hold it down. They're gonna be hot to the touch at first, so just be careful. Mine calls for a warm peel, so I'm just gonna wait until it gets warm. That happens pretty quickly, I've noticed, so I just feel it for a second, and once it's warm, I just peel it right off. Glorious! Next, I'll walk you through a very simple stitch to embroider the seeds on. We are going to use a light tan or sandy color, and we're going to thread our needle about an arm's length, and we're going to do what in the embroidery world is called a lazy daisy stitch. So we're going to come up through our lemon, and then right next to that stitch, go right back down. You're going to form a loop, and depending on how big you want the seed, you're going to pull back up through until you just very gently tighten that loop around your stitch. Now you're going to go back around the edge of that, what would be a petal if you were doing the lazy daisy, and pull back through very gently. Now to give it more of a seed, I go back up to the top to kind of give it a little point. And I'm going to go right down there next to the very tip of the petal. I'm going to pull it back through. Very carefully too. If you do it too tight, it doesn't quite look right. I'm going to do it one more time just to give it a little bit more of that seed shape. And back through the tip of the petal. This might take you a few tries. It took me a few lemons, so that's totally fine. If you don't get it right the first time, that's why we made a lot of lemons. Here, I'll do it again for you. Up through. Next to your stitch, go back down. Make a very small little loop there. Come back up. Catch the loop with your stitch. Hope you don't mind my little toddler in the background. She just got up from nap time. Back around the very tip of the petal. Up at the very middle again. And try not to go up too high, up past, kind of like I did on that first one. It's probably about as high as you want to go. And you'll get better at controlling this over time. It does take a little bit of practice. And back up at the top again. And then back down. Sometimes I've done it a third time if I don't feel quite satisfied. but I prefer just about that much right there. I'm going to speed it up for the rest of the lemons, but feel free to revisit that last step as often as you need to. Sometimes if I have a lot of embroidery to do on a project, I'll just put it all in a basket and do it later while my nerdy family's watching Star Trek or something, but feel free to just enjoy. Next, we are going to sew the peel onto the lemon just from one edge to another, and I will show you how to do that in just a second. This next part is optional, but to make your lemons a little bit more firm, just take a light piece of cardboard and cut a circle out smaller than your lemon, and you can trim it a little if you need to as you go. Cut it in half, and then place it in your lemon just to make sure you have a little left over. Now, like I said, you can sew these lemons by hand. I'm going to use this stitch that's like a blanket stitch on the edge. I'm going to select it on my machine, and I'm going to take it down a little bit so that the stitches are a little closer together. I'm going to line it up so you have the very curve of the tip of that peel. I'm going to lay it flat on top. And I'm going to just secure it with my hands. I don't like to use pins because I feel like it crinkles it up, and I think it gives me a little more control to hold it. If you want to use pins though, and you're better at using pins than I am, go ahead and feel free to do so. As it curves, I'm letting the yellow part under my left hand just crinkle up a little bit while I try to keep the right part as flat on top as I can. I'm going to sew this entire side of the peel from tip to tip. You may want to mark where you're going to fold your lemon. Sometimes I end up with a little bit more peel, sometimes not enough. It just varies depending on how much you do this project. So you're going to want to just pull the end of the peel out like this. And I just take my embroidery scissors and I just trim off in a little circular motion here. Just how much I need so that it'll fold back over again nice and neat. On the other side, we're only going to sew to the middle of the lemon. This will give us some room to stuff him. This is where I'm going to pop my little cardboard piece that I cut out earlier right in. I like doing that because then when I go to stuff it, it doesn't look like a big lemon pillow. It keeps more of a shape of a nice crisp lemon wedge. Sorry, I've been looking at lemon wedges for too long. I'm almost ready for the next project. Anyways, we'll go finish him, and then we're going to just sew right along the rest of this edge here. This is kind of the hardest part, in my opinion, because the sewing machine just doesn't like all that plump lemon peel right there. And honestly, this is probably where it would be easier just to embroider the edges by hand if you're not in a hurry. We're going to finish off our stitch there. Do a little back stitch to reinforce it. And there he is, ready for your child's next farmer's market or fancy lobster dinner party. If you enjoyed this project and you're thirsty for more, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Who knows, maybe we'll roll out that fancy lobster dinner party to go with these lemons next. Thanks, see you soon.